All suffering arises because of disharmony with the now. The now is the only moment that is real, and hence the only moment that matters. From the spiritual perspective, the now is all that is, the manifestation of the source. The individual consciousness creates disharmony with the now when it forgets that it is one with the source and instead becomes identified with thought forms. The human experience is full of phenomena that can be perceived as undesirable. These include natural processes such as pain, which is body's physiological response to keep itself safe, and inconveniences such as a flat tire. What creates suffering is not phenomena, but the interpretation of phenomena through the filter of thoughts. The untrained mind incessantly creates thoughts and identifies with them. When thoughts are repeated and reinforced by beliefs, they become thought forms, the internal creations of the mind. These creations produce negative emotions, inflicting suffering. One of the enduring creations of the mind is the false identity known as ego. This identity is created by mistaking yourself for forms, such as your gender, education, occupation, relationships, accomplishments, ownership, tribal identities such as race, ethnicity, nationality, religion, ideology, and so on. Identification with forms is a suffering of ignorance. Since all forms are separate, limited, and temporary, identification with them creates fundamental delusions of separation, deficiency, and fear. The more strongly you identify with a form, the more afraid you are going to be when that form is threatened, as all forms are. These three delusions create mental poisons. Just as poison damages the body, mental poisons damage the fundamental ability of consciousness, which is to work with reality and transform it. For example, the delusions of deficiency and fear produce the mental poison of powerlessness. Seeing oneself at the mercy of phenomena creates victimhood, dependence on external validations, and blame, which is ego's way of staying a victim. Powerlessness also sustains habits of unconsciousness, such as escaping the now through addictions to substances or people. More mental poisons arise from the need for compulsive expansion. The ego says, "I am insufficient right now. I need to gather more to become sufficient in the future." This need is a never-ending pursuit, because no matter how much the ego accumulates, it still wants more. This is similar to cancer, where a cell undergoes unhealthy expansion, harming the host in the process. The impossible pursuit of never-ending expansion gives rise to struggle. On this path of struggle, harmony with the now becomes impossible. Unfortunately, our current mass consciousness of consumerism reinforces the delusion of being more by having more. The need to keep on piling more and more to feel important creates greed. Ego also craves external validation in the form of relationships, accomplishments, and approval from others. Since the ego sees others as separate from itself, it creates the mental poison of needing to control and dominate others. Ego does not treat others as beings, but as things to use, manipulate, and possess. When others inevitably resist control, conflict arises, which can further escalate into violence, and in the case of group ego, into war and destruction. When ego's efforts to expand are frustrated, anger arises, which can further develop into abuse to both self and others. Directed inward, anger creates shame and guilt. When it's directed outward, it creates aggression and harm. Another mental poison is judgment. In order to feel superior, the ego constantly finds something to judge as inferior. When judgment is directed toward beings, they are dehumanized. They are seen as flawed mortals who need correction and punishment rather than expressions of the source. Extreme judgment creates hatred, which is the first step toward mass madness. Hatred can set ego on the path of self-justified destruction, as exemplified by the unspeakable horrors of the Holocaust. Because of ego's need to appear bigger and better than what it is, genuine relationships stay out of reach. Ego sees others as things to expand the sense of self, not as beings. When others don't align with ego's expectations, it creates blame and drama. When judgment is directed toward phenomena, it categorizes them into two buckets, desirable and undesirable. For the desirable, ego develops attachment, which in extreme cases turns into obsession. For the undesirable, the ego develops aversion. One of the fundamental characteristics of ego is that it loves pain. This is why it becomes permanently attached to hurts and wounds. If you suffer because of hurts that happened years or even decades ago, you are suffering from ego. Let's examine a case where someone said unkind words to you. The words did not cause any physical harm. They might have caused emotional hurt, but the incident has no reality in the now, because it does not exist in the now. It exists only in your memory. When you relive that hurt, you use the now to create suffering by taking a wound from your past and opening it in the now, in order to feel that hurt again. As you can see, this is insanity created by ego. The other way ego loves pain is through anticipation. When you suffer from anxiety and worry, you are using the now to create pain in the so-called future. Since the future is just a projection of the mind, the suffering has been created by the mind and poisons the experience of the now. In addition to creating suffering through past and future, ego creates suffering by resisting and rejecting the now. It denies reality when it screams, "How can this be? This is not possible." An all too familiar experience of such suffering is betrayal. If you look at just the phenomenon, at the core of betrayal lies a simple reality. A human being who agreed to do something did not follow through on the agreement. It might be a simple commitment of an appointment, or a complicated commitment of a marriage. But in either case, the person who made the commitment out of free will chose not to keep it. Again, out of free will. If we look objectively, exercise of free will is what makes us human. So there is nothing to be upset about. The hysteria around betrayal is created by ego because it loves to make others wrong. And by resisting what is, ego insists that reality be different from what it already is, which, once again, is insane. As we have seen, mental poisons created by ego make you suffer. The way out of this misery is to go beyond ego. The question people often ask is, if I let go of my ego, will I stop taking action? How will I accomplish anything? The question is a reflection of how deep ego runs in our consciousness. Going beyond ego does not mean passivity or indifference or the end of progress, but that each step is taken with purpose, wisdom, and honor for all beings. The feverish activity of ego does not bring fulfillment, only disharmony, exhaustion, and conflict. Even when it gets what it wants, ego cannot rest to enjoy the fruits of activity, because it immediately seeks something else, projected in future. If we look at what occupies most people with unimaginable amount of money, it is the mental toil of preserving what they have and acquiring even more. Our ego-driven society has created a large population with a comfortable lifestyle and lots of misery. The consciousness of wealth needs to be created inside so that it can shine forth regardless of the number of zeros in a bank account. What is more, By going beyond ego, we can experience the joy that comes from true sharing and conscious action, which can transform both ourselves and the world around us. When one chooses the higher path of service, harmony with the now becomes effortless, even in the midst of vigorous activity. Relying on ego to guide us also underscores ignorance of spiritual reality. We think that once the incessant noise of ego subsides, we will be lost in the resulting silence. This is because we do not know that beyond the noise lies the gentle calling of our higher self, the part of us that stayed behind when we took on the journey of this incarnation. Unlike ego, which is compulsive and forceful, the higher self is gentle, and one has to make an effort to hear its call, because it honors our free will. It calls us to align our journey with meaning and purpose, and focus on what matters: joy, true sharing, growing our inner power, and using it to transform our reality. A deeper discussion of going beyond ego can be found in the works by Eckhart Tolle, including The Power of Now and The New Earth. There are 3 pathways to free oneself from the bondage of suffering. First is knowledge. Suffering is caused by mistaking yourself for what you're not. Hence, knowledge of your true essence liberates you. The formless essence that you are has acquired forms such as body and mind, as equipment needed on a physical journey. The journey itself is what matters, not the equipment. The knowledge that you are the supreme essence, the source itself, is called non-duality. From that perspective, you are giving the source an opportunity to experience itself through you. What an honor! A video on our website discusses non-duality in greater detail. Knowing your true nature frees you from the grip of fear. Nothing can harm you, because the real you is eternal presence. What you perceive as harm is an illusion created by mistaking yourself to be form. Higher knowledge also makes you understand that whatever you encounter on your path is there to help you grow. An experience that you fear because of ignorance may be exactly the experience you need for your highest soul growth. By coming in harmony with the now and by understanding that everything that happens in your life is a gift from the now, you can turn any experience into a catalyst for transformation for yourself and others. Second, there are practices of awareness that help you break the cycle of creating thoughts and becoming identified with them. These include meditation, contemplation, and mindfulness. These practices make you aware of your mind and its creations, and in the process, help you go beyond them. Over a period of time, you realize yourself to be the primary energy that creates forms, and you are no longer tormented by the mind. Third, dedicate yourself to service. True service requires the understanding that you, as well as others, are expressions of Source. From that understanding, your actions become an offering of love to the creation, while demanding nothing in return. When you honor the Source through service, you become the channel for higher energies, such as compassion, love, and true abundance. When you align with service, your incarnation serves its highest purpose, which is to collectively transform this reality into a living expression of joy.